I am in my 20s. My friends are as well, yet none of us drive. Data suggests that Gen Z drives less, in general, and today we will discuss why. You may ask,
Hey, maybe it's just you and your friends.
this, however, is the big social process.
In the US, the number of 16-year-old licensed drivers plummets.
Young adults' share of vehicle registrations is also decreasing.
In Italy, the majority of under 30-year-olds will give up car ownership.
Bear attacks rise worldwide.
Okay, stop it, you nerd. Long story short, the trend is real. Gen Z is less interested in cars and driving. But why? Of course, there are economic reasons. But they are not the whole story. Let's talk about psychology first and economy second. The Gen Z and I, personally, are afraid of unnecessary risk. Maybe that is a trait of humans in general, but it seems even stronger with Gen Z. I never, ever wanted to take responsibility for my life while I'm going home. It feels safer to let the professional in the public transport to do this job. Each human being, everyone, we all are taking responsibility for our survival every day of our existence. If you can find just a little more peace by outsourcing the work of driving to another person, I think you should do that. And this is a sentiment that I discovered in many Gen Z people. Having a car adds to a ton of micro decisions that you have to make daily. Where to park it, how to protect it from being stolen, how to make sure it is shielded from the weather. All of these are inevitable additional challenges for your daily life. Sometimes, when I'm heading somewhere in the mornings, I think that it is actually a humankind's small miracle that we are even able to get up early and arrive at our workplaces. I could never imagine adding additional micro decisions to the already suffocating morning routine. From that perspective, scooters and bicycles are better. Since they are less valuable and less mechanically complex, protecting them is easier, which means less micro decisions. Imagine being really sleepy in the morning.
I have awoken.
Or being tired after a long day of work. You are going to your workplace, or on the contrary, you are going home. If you do it by driving yourself, you will have to stay concentrated, present in the moment. But what if you are so tired that you can't? Imagine losing focus just for a second. And what if you are not tired? As a Gen Z, your attention span is always challenged by a shit ton of news. Imagine, many among us even watch TikTok and are dependent on short-form content for stimulation. This means it's even harder to focus while driving, for many. And it can all end in people dying. If you know that your attention can let you down in the most inappropriate moment, then it is best to rely on it less if it is possible. And speaking of content, we always have a source of content in our pockets. If you were returning home before smartphones and internet, you had far fewer things to do while heading home. You maybe had a sketchbook or something to read with you, possibly a newspaper or a media player, but that's it. You haven't had a whole universe of content in your pocket. You had no option to text friends or your significant other while heading home. There are millions of things happening in your pocket, things that can attract your interest and distract you from focusing on the road. In these circumstances, driving may be deadly, not only for yourself, but also for others, even if you are not tired. It is also a common knowledge that Gen Z is a generation of anxiety. Lots of surveys suggest that Gen Z is a worrying generation. Out on the roads, it is important that you are able to act decisively and follow a set of simple, clear rules without overthinking them. If you worry and think too much, then you will need a lot of time to make decisions on the road. It can always end badly.
Warning, temperature critical.
But then, the good question is, why do Gen Z people worry so much? And this is when psychological reasons of not driving connect to economic ones. Many among us are facing risks of never ever finding a stable career because the labor market is constantly changing, with whole professions either disappearing or slowly dying out. This means one has to buy less. Cars can potentially ruin your possibilities for saving and investing, with their high basic cost, also possible high repairs cost, and on top of that, expensive insurances and possible taxation. Let's say you are doing okay for a moment. In the realities of harsh, high competition labor market though, you can lose your job in a day. If you do, then you need good reserves to survive while you're looking for a new job. This encourages more saving and less consumption, including less consumption in automotives. Cars also lose their value as you hold them, which means that most cars are a bad investment. Of course, some cars can be a form of investment as well. For example, rare models that carry historical value, but they are hugely expensive, and few people actually use them for everyday driving. The economic reasons go beyond simple calculations of expenses and income. Your needs are often connected to the type of a household you live in. If you're a Gen Z, then likely you either live as a one-person household, or with your parents, or with roommates. Of course, it is also possible that you're living with your significant other. In that case, you may need the car the most. But this is more complicated, with Gen Z being the least romantically active generation. Those of us who are in a relationship are often in a long-distance one, when the person you love is on the other side of the continent. And when you are in a relationship living in the same town, you may both struggle career-wise to afford your own place. If you are a one-person household, then you have no need of a vehicle that can carry from 2 to 6 people, a vehicle that has large cargo capacity. If you live alone, then you generally need less supplies weekly, which means that you can carry all your weekly loot in one bag or in a backpack. You rarely need to carry that much to reach a point when it becomes systematically uncomfortable to use public transportation, bicycles or scooters to get around. In that case, the only reason you might need a car is if you live in the place where it is simply impossible to survive without one. In all other cases, less extreme ones, a one-person household does not need a car. Living alone also means that you're likely introverted and value your independence. This means that you're likely used to spending time alone, and that means your map of places to travel will be much smaller than that of a person who has a family or is in a relationship. Option 2 is living with roommates. If you are living with roommates, then your first priority is likely to stop living with random people, and this means sending your excess money to rent, not to purchase a car. Your third option is living with parents. With the current trends in housing costs, this is getting a more and more widespread option. When you are living with parents, as a Gen Z, you are a part of an already functioning household. Your parents deliver all the supplies, and they are the ones planning all movements. If you need to go somewhere, you can ask them, and they will help you. Turns out, you don't really need a car in this scenario as well. Additional problem that some people have is, if you are living with parents, you are also kind of limited in your movements. Since you are living with them, they have the right to know where you're going and for how long. They may not be used to your prolonged absence, and you can feel the tension in the air when you do leave. In these circumstances, it might feel easier for you not to go somewhere if this is not absolutely necessary. As a result, a Gen Z person living with parents might have a limited map of locations to go to, and this will decrease your need in a car as well. You may also live in an area in which you objectively don't need a car, one that has a strong public transportation system. I, personally, don't want to drive so much that I try to choose places like that when I move. There are also several social trends connected to the state of the post-industrial globalized economy. Trends that make people's movement maps smaller and contribute to Gen Z people not wanting a car. The first trend, ironically, is migration. It is movement, yes, but you don't need a car to change cities or countries. And when you move to the new place, it is likely that you will feel isolated from the new city you live in. Thanks to the internet, the social connections from your old city will be preserved, and you will have limited motivation to build social connections in the new place. The result of this is, since most of your communication happens in the internet, you have less reason to move around. You know, people typically migrate to the places that already attract immigrants. This is not a bad thing, but it has consequences. For example, the very place you moved to may already be so diverse that you, as an expat, will feel no obligation to integrate into some local whole. You may be thinking, hey, there are so many of us immigrants here. But the problem is, different immigrants have different social and cultural backgrounds. So the fact that they are immigrants does not make them feel closer to each other. One may feel even more isolated. This can put you into the internet even deeper and discourage you from moving even more. If you're not an immigrant but a local in the country that is interesting for migration, then you are discouraged from movement too, because the big cities and even your own birthplace town is increasingly unaffordable. At least partly, that happens because of migration. Why buy a car and move at all if, realistically, your whole life won't likely get better from moving? All of this, as I said, puts you into the internet even deeper. If you are discouraged from moving around, then why buy a car? Why people migrate though? It is because of a growing economic specialization. The career tracks are getting more and more narrow. Candidates from different corners of the world compete for obscure, over-specialized roles. Often, it is only possible to continue your career if you move to the foreign country. But over-specialization also changes societies themselves, even if we do not consider the effects of migration. There are no more simple, massively available jobs that create normal social experiences. There are no more societies of peasants or societies of industrial workers. We are living in a world where people of wildly different career tracks and completely different life trajectories struggle to understand each other. The specialization itself isolates, so you move around less. You exist mostly in your private space, in your home, with a very, very narrow circle of the closest people. And this is why you do not go to any third space anymore. This is one of the reasons why Gen Z people need a car less. We are living in a world that encourages fragmentation. The fragmentation of life tracks, of political opinions. Even in entertainment, we are separated from each other. Hell, even the conventional wisdom around YouTube channels is that you must have a narrow niche, and the narrower your niche, the better. Life is like that in all things in our times. We are only recommended things that we are already predisposed to like. The car is more than an instrument. It is a symbol of how industrial modernity sees itself. It is a symbol of a society where everyone thinks that it is possible to move everywhere, not only physically, but also socially. It is a symbol of a society that is fundamentally optimist, despite all the horrors, wars, and devastation of the history of the 20th century. One that believes that all the problems of the world can be solved through technological and social progress. Gen Z, at least for now, cannot share this optimism. Gen Z is the generation that has not yet witnessed a time of social optimism. What it has witnessed instead is the global pandemic, wars, economic and institutional instability. With an experience like this, it can be hard to truly believe that you control the general direction of your life. This feeling of lack of control in life is what I often see in fellow Gen Z people. Many of us feel dropped into the endless struggle for survival, in which there is no victory. The public transport, with its pre-planned trajectories of movement, is more fitting to the pessimist vision of the world, in which you control few things. The private car, where the driver controls everything, does not fit into this vision. This is all I wanted to share with you today. Like, comment this video, and subscribe for more stories and essays from the Videological Dungeon.